Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye fans, to another episode of Punting is Winning. We are your hosts, JD, and I'm Keith. It's been another week in the books. Not much going on other than the spring sports, baseball and softball right now, but we'll get through that and get a little bit to talk about there as well. So,
well, before that, why don't we, because we both had big weekends, why don't we just give a quick synopsis of what our weekends were like? I know you went to Chicago last week and then spent the weekend. What did you do? Like, I don't know.
Well, I went to the Legions of Metal Fest, which is, I don't know, I don't want to say it's a big music festival. It is kind of it's at Reggie's Bar in downtown Chicago. I actually stayed right next to Wintrust Arena, which is where DePaul plays. And DePaul actually graduated on Saturday, so that was a very busy area.
Yeah.
That's also where the Sky play their games as well. But it was a 2-day Friday, Saturday thing. We upgraded to the VIP package for Saturday so that we had the VIP lounge and the meet and greet, and they had a buffet set up there. And it was just kind of a nice place to go up and sit down and relax a little bit. Guys were up there just getting tuned up, and it was just kind of one of those things where you're standing in the crowd and you look over at somebody and they're all having a great time, and then half hour later you see them up on stage. So all of the bands were all mingling in with the crowd, and they were just fans as well. So, but it was good. It was really good, and the bands were really good. Had a great time.
How did you get there?
Took the train. Took the Amtrak from Ottumwa, and it goes right down to Union Station there in downtown Chicago, and took the L from there over to where we were staying at, which I don't know. I think when we went, it took longer for some reason because we went through the loop, but on the way back, it was a different route on the Green Line, so it took probably 10-15 minutes to get from the station to downtown, which isn't bad, and then a little walk to Union Station. So, yeah, it was an interesting time. Something it's something I hadn't done before. I've ridden a train in Europe. I haven't not ridden the Amtrak here until then, and I would do it again. It was the easiest way to get to Chicago from here, and you don't have to worry about traffic. You don't have to worry about parking. $100 gets you from Ottumwa to Chicago, and $3 on the L got us to the hotel. So, I probably couldn't have driven it any cheaper.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But you had an interesting weekend too, didn't you?
Well, I did. The school I went to, the college I went to first, in Niels Community College, I played baseball there too, and the field was dedicated a few years back, quite a ways back, to the coach that started the program. His name's Pat Doherty, and he died last July, unfortunately. And so they did a rededication of the field on Saturday. They had a doubleheader with Southeastern Community College, and then they had a real nice dinner and like a program afterwards in one of the campus buildings. It wasn't there when I was there, so it's a newer building. And I got to meet some of the people that were associated with the coach, Pat Doherty, and his family, some of his family. But to me, the most enjoyable time, and that was not, I mean, that was enjoyable, but was I got to meet up with some guys I played ball with. There was 3 others and myself that we played on the same team together. 2 guys came in the same time I did, and 1 guy came in my second year, so he would have been a freshman when I was a sophomore there. And then our coach, who coached us Rick Matthews was there, and he was kind of like the MC. He did the main dedication part of it and gave a real nice speech. And I got to sit down and talk to him real briefly. There was a lot of people demanding his attention. So I did get to sit down and talk to him. He recognized me and he knew who I was from even 37 years ago, but I did see him between then and now. But it was really a great time. I really enjoyed it. And they're talking about doing a 3-year baseball alumni every 3 years, kind of get together, probably over a weekend where they can watch games and get together and that kind of thing. And I'd be all about that. You can count me in almost every time because I just really enjoyed getting back together with some of the guys. And we really had a nice time. I kind of wish there'd have been more, but that's okay. There's guys that are still playing baseball, not playing, but coaching. I know there's several guys that are coaching yet, but really had a nice time and got home kind of late Saturday night. Didn't get home till 11:30 Saturday night, but so we spent basically a 12-hour day. By the time we left to the time that we got back, it was actually a little more than that. It was probably about 13 and a half by the time it was all said and done. But really good time. Enjoyed it. Brought the wife along and she enjoyed it. And she got to meet some of the guys that I've talked about in the past. And so she understands my stories a little bit better now. But other than that, it was a great time. And, Sunday I just didn't do much. I got home and mowed and sprayed on Monday. But other than that.
So I guess the big question is did they win the doubleheader?
No. Lost them both. 9-3 and 4-3.
It's never a good thing to lose on a dedication weekend.
No, but they had a decent season. I think they ended up like 26 and 13 or 14, something like that. So they just didn't. They weren't up to competition with Southeastern. I think they're kind of leading the league. But
okay.
And back when I played Southeastern, it was a walk in the park. You could send your second and third team down there and 10 run them. But things have changed.
Yeah, everything goes in cycles.
Yeah. So okay,
good.
shall we
Sounds like a good time.
Shall we get back on board here and get back on track?
Yeah.
The question of the week
last week. Yeah, last week's question of the week. How you thought the Iowa football team would do, just kind of off the cuff post spring reaction, I guess. Seems that the consensus is a 7-5, 8-4 type of season. Personally, I'm seeing more of maybe a 9-3.
I'm seeing a 7-5.
I just think they're going to be better than people anticipate them being, and the toughest games that they have are at home.
Believe me, I hope that you're right, and it's more like 9-3 or 10-2. I really do. But I also have
10-2. They're a French playoff team.
Yeah, but I have to be a little more realistic and assume that people are going to get hurt in key positions. Things are not going to go well in certain things. There's going to be, I think their biggest game in the first three is obviously Iowa State. That's over there this year. So I don't know.
Well,
I think 7-5 is realistic. 8-3, 8-4, is kind of on the confident level, but I think 9-3 is getting a little bit, you're pretty confident then.
Here's my reasoning behind that is I see things, especially with the Iowa football program, things go in cycles with them as well. And typically they follow up a year where they lose close games by winning those close games the next year. And they lost 3 games last year by 3 points or less. And, that's the difference between 11-2 and 8-5. And a lot of times you see that reverse the following year or 2 years later. It's that cycle of events that always gets me. So I'm like, that's where I feel that there's more confidence in, the odds, or the universal odds are better in your favor the following year, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's
we
why
can
I'm
hope.
feeling a little more optimistic. Plus, I think the offense is going to be better. It's a better quarterback room. The wide receivers are, they looked a lot better, and I think there's going to be a little bit of a drop off on the running back, but not a ton. It's hard to replace a guy, you think back to you replaced Sean Green. It took a couple years.
Yeah.
It's not that we had poor quality behind him, but there's just
Not as
that,
dynamic.
I don't want to say generational talent because they're
Right.
not technically generational talent. They're not like, Marcus Allen or something like that. That's just absolutely phenomenal, but very, very star power talent. And it's hard to replace that with the following year. But I'm not saying that they can't. And I'm not saying that Kamari Moulton, Jazz Patterson, Nathan McNeil, Xavier Williams aren't going to contribute in the same fashion. But to expect it to be the exact same is overstretching.
Yeah, and maybe to your point is that instead of trying to replace Caleb Johnson with Kamari Moulton, I think you replace Caleb Johnson with Kamari Moulton, Jazzian Patterson. I don't think you can do it with one person.
Running back by committee.
Exactly. I just don't see one guy stepping out like Caleb did last year. I know. Maybe call me, I guess, facetious, but I don't see it.
That's the Bill James and Moneyball theory right there.
Mm-hmm.
You replace the production, you don't have to necessarily replace them with one person. You can do it with three.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I like I said, I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic at this time of the year. So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, we'll know more in August when practices start and we, start hearing scuttlebutt.
We can actually see. We'll actually get to see Gronowski throwing the ball a little bit,
right?
Running the offense.
Exactly. I know that some of the reporters will get down there in June and probably see him out on the field and take some photographs or some video of him throwing, right. And they'll release it to people, and they'll kind of hey, it's way too early to get excited about football, but here's your guy throwing right here. They'll do one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
Well, we got a new question of the week. We've been doing this the last couple of weeks, so we're going to put the two questions, the previous weeks and then the new weeks together, so that people don't have to listen all the way to the end. I wish they would, but it's fine.
I hope they will.
This week's question, yeah, I hope they do too. But this week's question of the week is: there's 6 games left in the Big Ten baseball conference for baseball, and the question is will Iowa win the conference? I'll give you a little bit of help on this. They have 6 games left: 3 against Oregon State, 3 against Oregon.
But that's 3 conference games left.
Just 3 conference games, but 6 games total.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But right now they're 21 and 6 in the conference.
6.
I believe UCLA is 17 and 7. So they've got to catch up a little bit. So they've got some, where Iowa's playing non-conference this weekend, they'll probably have to play conference and then a conference again to catch up. So they play the same amount of games. So that's the question. Will Iowa win the Big Ten conference in baseball?
Well, I think, they about have to take 2 out of 3 from Oregon to that would that should guarantee them.
Well,
at least nothing, at worst a tie.
Yeah. Here's the thing though. UCLA lost 2 out of 3 to whoever they played last weekend. So that helped. Mm-hmm. If they would have swept, then Iowa would probably be sitting in second place right now. Just maybe in first, but only by percentage points. If that makes sense.
By virtue of more games, yeah.
By virtue of more games and having a better winning percentage maybe over that. Well, it'd be a better conference winning percentage maybe.
Yeah.
So let's just dive into baseball real quick. We'll get that taken care of. We'll hit some softball and a little bit of transfer news with basketball. The Iowa baseball team had a 1-3 week. It was not a good week for Iowa baseball. They lost a home game Wednesday with Illinois State 6-5. Kind of a head scratcher. I don't understand what that one's all about. But then they went out to Seattle, Washington, and played the University of Washington on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. On Friday, the Iowa Hawkeyes lost to Washington 4-3. They came back on Saturday and lost to Washington 3-1, and then won on Sunday 8-0.
Yeah, the two losses were on walk-offs in the bottom of the ninth.
I was unable to watch Saturdays because I was at that event, and then Friday was a late game, and I didn't. I think I looked at the score when I got up in the morning.
Yeah,
And then Sunday I
was
did catch a tiny bit of that.
I was actually, well, of course, being where we were at, it was late nights anyway. So by the time I got back to the hotel, I was able to at least catch up on the Twitter feeds, and yeah, both of them on walk-offs. Friday nights was on a walk-off single, I think.
Could have been.
Saturdays was on a walk-off 2-run home run.
Okay. Well, they played them tight.
Yeah. They just didn't do anything with runners in scoring position. Iowa was terrible with runners in scoring position over the weekend.
Yeah.
Until Sunday.
Yeah. Well, that 8-0 Sunday was kind of we're going to get back at you. Currently Iowa sits at 32-15 overall. They are 21-6 in the conference. Their next game was UIC, and that was supposed to be Wednesday night. It got canceled. Was it tonight?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Okay, Tuesday night tonight. It got canceled for whatever reason. We're not sure. And now they play a Friday, Saturday, Sunday games in Des Moines at Principal Park against Oregon State. Oregon State.
Quick update on that. The Sunday game, I believe, has been moved up to a 12:35 start due to travel considerations for Oregon State.
Okay.
And I understand that that's also the reason why the UIC game, there's something about travel.
No. I think Iowa was supposed to travel there, wasn't they? Weren't they supposed to go to
Illinois, and I think there was something with travel arrangements that didn't work out right, and they just canceled.
Well, Oregon State was rated, I think, in the top 10 for a while. I'm not sure how they're doing now. I think they have kind of fallen a little bit. But they're 35-12 overall. And do they even play in a conference? Is it like the WAC? Or
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think they
play in a conference.
If they do a conference, it's them in Washington State, and that's it.
No, I think they're independent.
I don't know how they do that. I don't know how they're doing it.
Yeah, so Iowa needs to take care of business. They need to, I'd say if you can beat Oregon State, maybe 2 out of 3, that would help your RPI. And if you can take 2 out of 3 from Oregon, I think you win the conference.
And I think if you win the conference, it'd be awful hard to keep you out.
Yeah, and then you're going to have to get ready for the conference tournament. You'll be the number 1 seed if you win the conference, of course. That's always a good thing to win the conference outright and get the number 1 seed. That helps any place any tournament you're in, you're number 1 seed. That's where you want to be. But it doesn't guarantee you anything at this point either. You could go out in your first game and just get smoked, and I think it's a two game elimination deal. Pretty sure. So you need to really concentrate on. I know pitching will be at a premium for that tournament because of how many games they play in a short amount of time. So you better have more than just your top 3. You better have good guys after him. So that's where, depth in the pitching lineup is going to be so key to winning the tournament, just like it is every year. So good luck to the Hawkeyes for this season, for the rest of the season. The 3 games at Oregon State and they play Oregon after that at home. So that finishes up the season.
Yeah. Wish I could go to that Oregon State series, but it's got too much going on this weekend. So.
I thought about trying to get there on Sunday, but I'm not sure if it's going to work. I have to see. Yeah. I'll try, but I'm not sure.
That'd be on Mother's Day. I don't think I'm going to be able to do
that's kind of a rough one. Moving on, softball has concluded their season. This week they went 4-0, which is perfect, of course, as you all know.
Can't get much better.
No. Tuesday they got the revenge on Iowa State after losing over in Ames. They got the revenge on Iowa State in Iowa City. Beat them 5-0. Anytime you beat the other team from Iowa, that shall be unnamed. Then on Wednesday, your game with UNI was canceled. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they had games with Rutgers in which they swept all 3 of those games. And they were 4-3 wins, a 3-0 win, and a 4-0 win on Sunday. Iowa is 35-17 overall, 15-7 in the conference. And they play next in the Big Ten tournament as the 6th seed. They are playing number 11, Penn State, at 10 o'clock Central Time on Wednesday in West Lafayette, Indiana. So everybody should try to get on and watch that game, and hopefully they can take that W. That's also a double elimination, I believe. Am I wrong on that? I think it's a double elimination.
I think it's.
So, being a 6th seed after the way they started the season with all the commotion with the coach and different things, I think they recovered pretty nicely towards the end of the season. Yeah. I'll give them credit for that.
They're playing some of the better ball now.
Yeah, they're playing as good as they played all year.
That series against Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska is a pretty good team, so you can kind of give them a break on that. And I think Iowa at that point when they were playing Nebraska they were still kind of in that trying to find their identity a little bit. And I think that once they got through and they beat them the last game, I believe, they kind of started to figure, get a little more confident in themselves. And I think that confidence will win you games that you don't think you're going to win, or maybe on paper you're not supposed to win. Sometimes you can play ball and you do things that you wouldn't normally do. You'd be hesitating on certain things that you now just do it because you feel like, what do we got to lose? And that gives you confidence when you start making plays like that, and then it just rubs off on everybody, and you get a lot of momentum going, and who knows what you can do in the tournament. You could end up winning it. I mean, there's no reason they couldn't win it. It'd be a pretty tall order from the 6th seed, but especially when you're talking about UCLA and Oregon, and really pretty good teams out there on the West Coast.
Yeah. But all you have to, as you say, it's sometimes you only have to win just the one game. When you get it down to a double elim, it's teams that are higher seeded might play tighter just because they're higher seeded. Their expectations, or maybe they go into it a little more lackadaisical sometimes. You just never know.
Yeah. Just a little news on basketball. This is going to be a short one tonight. We're not going to go real long. Just a little news on basketball. I know Iowa will be hosting a 6-foot guard out of Central Florida named Emily Rodriguez. She visits on the 12th, I believe. That's when they got that set up. It's women's basketball, yes. Sorry, I didn't mention that before. She is a 6-foot guard. She averaged 11.9 points, 5.3 rebounds per game. She will have 3 years remaining eligibility, which is good. 41% free regular field goal shooting, and 33% behind the line, 3-point line. I'm hoping good things there. She hasn't committed to anybody, and she's going to visit on the 12th. So hopefully we can get, if that's who Jan wants, let's see if we can get her.
Yeah.
I like the fact she's got 3 years remaining. It's always, these one and dones they're good, but you get used to them and then they're gone. So,
yeah, exactly.
We did have commitment last week. I'm not sure if we talked about it. I know we talked about it later. Chit Chat Wright, and we talked about her just a little bit. She did commit to Iowa, if I hadn't already said that. Not much more going on with women's basketball. This is kind of a slow time. There's some transfer portal news a little bit here and there, but nothing of any real significance has happened yet. We'll move down to men's basketball. They've had a couple of they hosted this past weekend, they hosted Cade Tyson. He is a North Carolina transfer, 6'7" small forward. He was previously at Belmont before transferring to North Carolina. And when he was at Belmont,
wasn't Belmont where Evan Bronze came from too?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
So while he was at Belmont, he averaged 15 points a game. But then he transferred to North Carolina and saw very limited times in games and only averaged about 2.9 points, but only logging like 7 minutes a game. So,
situation where sometimes the money is not worth the bench time.
Right. Yeah. So, hopefully if he enjoyed his trip this weekend, maybe we can see about getting him if that's what Ben wants. Sometimes kids come in for visits and you don't necessarily, you talk to them and they maybe don't fit. So,
yeah.
If he wants them, he should go out and get them, try everything you can do to get him to commit. But if he doesn't want him, I guess sometimes you got to let him go. And, you've only got a limited space on the roster, and he's getting pretty close to finishing up a little bit. I think there's some more guys that are looking. we'll see how that all turns out. And if there's any news there, we'll let you know. But at this
Well,
point,
I don't think we talked about it last time, but they did get the commitment from the Oklahoma guard, high school kid, Tate Sage.
Tate Sage, yes, they did get the commitment from him. But like again, a high school kid coming in. Hopefully he's, he can contribute first year. I'd like to see that. Get some guys in there, but
the kid from Valley's the one we need to have contributing the first
the
year.
tall one,
with the 6'11" size.
6'11", yeah. Hopefully he's got
a little
some
bit more size,
meat on his bones. He's not going to get pushed around underneath very much, but sometimes that you get that in the first year or two, and then you bulk up a little bit and you start realizing what it's all about. I mean, we might have him. He might be a real contributor in the junior and senior year, but hopefully sooner than that would be really nice too.
Nice.
Yeah. One thing before we get done, I wanted to talk a little bit, and I know you didn't get a chance to see it because you were traveling. I want to talk a little bit about the Indiana Fever at the Carver Hawkeye when they played the Brazilian National Team. Now, it wasn't much of a game, but the best part of the whole thing was that Caitlin Clark scored the first 3 points of the game. That was kind of
That's what I saw.
Nice to see. But it was a 108-44 win, so you really can't. I don't know how much you can take from that. I guess you can get your players all in and let them run the court and see how they run the offense and play defense. But I mean, but they had a day before they played Washington Mystics in a preseason game and ended up coming back from 15 and won it in overtime. So that's probably a more telling game for you going forward than anything that you did on Sunday at Carver. But the crowd was huge, like we expected it to be. The tickets were expensive. I think the average ticket cost was $620, which is
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Hey.
But if you want to see Caitlin Clark, she's not going to come cheap. So, it was a fun game. It was fun to watch. I think Indiana Fever is going to have a really good team this year. They've really got some solid. They've made some trades over the off season that really are going to help them. I mean, right now I'd say them and maybe the New York Liberty. And I'm not a big WNBA guy. I only watch the Fever typically, but it sounds like from everything I'm hearing is that they and the New York Liberty are the odds-on favorites for the championship, providing nobody gets hurt. That's important. Like Caitlin would happen to get hurt, they still would have a good team. I think they'd find a replacement, but I don't think you're going to find somebody as dynamic that draws the attention of the defense as much as Caitlin does.
Right.
So, if she stays healthy, I do look for them to breeze into the playoffs. And then I don't know if once they get into the playoffs, then it will get much more difficult, obviously, because you're playing better teams. But I still think I think I would put them odds on favorite for to win the whole thing at this point. And that's my prediction. Indiana Fever wins the WNBA title this season.
I got the chance to watch a little bit of that game on Saturday against Washington. It was on. We were at a bar having lunch, and it was on in the background. And I kind of was watching a little bit. And I know Caitlin didn't play in that game, and it was pretty obvious based on what little portions I was seeing. It was a struggle at times for him. You can definitely see that she's the straw that stirs the drink.
Yeah.
So keeping her healthy and understanding that she's your star. I mean, sometimes you got to put the egos behind you and just understand that if I want to get where I want to go, I got to embrace the fact that she's my star. And I'm going to protect her at all costs. That's better be the attitude that they have this year and not let her get the crap beat out of her like last year where, nobody really stood up to her. Oh, this is initiation of the league. No, this was just flat out abuse.
Yeah. Well, I think they brought Sophie Cunningham in from wherever she came in from, I think Phoenix, to be kind of an enforcer or a protector type. I think she's going to go out pretty early on in the game and say to the other team, when you don't know it and don't hear it, don't mess around with her or you're going to feel my wrath. So, there may be some of that. And I think the other players on the team, DeWanna Bonner and some of those others that have been around a while, they're going to protect her because they know that, like you said, she's the straw that stirs the drink. And nobody in the WNBA passes as good as Caitlin does, as well as she does. Nobody sees the court as well as she does. And I'm just taking liberties here a little bit on Breanna Stewart, some of those ones that have been around for a while. I know they're good players. But, Caitlin's the face of the league. Everybody knows it. And I was excited that the Iowa crowd was as loud, and they stayed all the way to the very end of the game. I mean, when you're up 108 or 100 to 40 something, it'd be easy to say, well, they got this in hand and then walk out the door. Well, I don't think a single person left. And that was good to see. In fact, some of the Indiana players were saying, I felt like I was an Iowa Hawkeye at that game, and that everybody made me feel so comfortable. And so that was nice to see. But congratulations and kudos to the Iowa fan base that were able to go in. I know it's they talked about maybe potentially in a couple more years, maybe if Caitlin can get it swung, that she can maybe get another game over at Iowa City, but it'd of course be a preseason game. They would never play a regular season game there. It's just not gonna be a thing.
I'd like to see him get an expansion team in Des Moines. I think it would go over well.
Only if Caitlin's going to be on it would it ever really work, I think.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, if her bringing the attention to the league might be just what it took to get that, and if you can get some of even if it's just some of the Iowa girls in the next few years that can go and be on that team or something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Iowa. Got star power. Paige Beckers is going to be a star in this league too. Don't discount that. I mean, not saying she's going to be at the level of Caitlin Clark, but she's going to draw.
Yeah, but I think what you're going to find, if you were able to somehow figure out a way to make a WNBA team, expansion team in Iowa, really you're only going to have, unless you get some really high name talent, it's going to be awful hard for them to draw 10,000 fans. Maybe 15 would be the highest, or maybe when Caitlin would come in as an opposing player, they would get a bigger crowd.
15 to 17 is the Caitlin Clark crowds anyway. I mean,
yeah,
the average attendance at most of the games is 5,000 or 6,000.
The one bad thing about having the season during the summer is that you're competing with Little League, you're competing with little girl softball, especially in the state of Iowa, because they only play in the summer. They don't. Well, I think is Iowa the only state in the union that plays summer baseball?
No, I don't think it's the only one that plays summer baseball, but it's one of the few that plays summer baseball.
Yeah. So, Friday night, kids are playing their second game of a doubleheader or something, and it goes into the evening, and, you're going to be up against that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, there's a good chance that, if one of these other cities can't make the grade as far as getting the attendance that they need to have and that kind of thing, maybe they could transfer it to Iowa, see how it goes. I know that's expensive and costly, and advertising and trying to get everything going and trying to find an arena. If they could get Wells Fargo for the summer, I'm not sure what goes on in their concerts, I'm sure, but they could probably make some scheduling adjustments.
I'm sure. I would have to think that Wells Fargo or Casey's Arena or whatever it's called now could accommodate, and that would be perfect. I mean, I just think that Iowa in and of itself is starved for a professional team. They just, you've got a AAA baseball team.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a professional. I mean, it's professional. Yeah, it's not major league. It's not highest professional level. There's no NFL team. There's no NBA team.
Well, there's a G League team, but
there's no professional. There's no high level.
Right.
And I just think that the state is starved for that. I just feel like there's a chance, there's a momentum at this point in that you could make something happen. And I would have to think that maybe the WNBA would probably be the first step.
Yeah, I'm sure that at the very beginning they could sustain a pretty nice crowd, at least for the couple of years. But I'm worried about long-term sustainability. If the team falls behind, it starts getting doesn't win much.
Yeah. Well, that's
people
just
can stop going.
anywhere, though.
Well,
that could be happening. I've always said that I think that with the Iowa and Iowa State fan bases in this state, as rabid as they are, you could make a professional football team would work here. You just need a place to play them. I think the fans, because football's king. You know, we know that football is king in this state. That's one of the things that is never going to change. I think professional football could work in the state of Iowa. Maybe not to the level of, you know, obviously like Dallas or Detroit or anything like that, but I think it could work. And you maybe have to have a smaller venue of, you know, instead of a 80 to 90,000 seat stadium, you know, you've got a 55 or 60,000 seat stadium that's cozy and nice, and you could fill it. And I've always thought that the fans in this state deserve something on a professional level, but maybe that's what we look at our college teams as. That's our professional stuff, and maybe it wouldn't work. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but I've always thought that I think the fan bases are rabid enough that if combined and put a professional team here that they could root for and go to on a consistent basis, it would happen. You could do it.
Well, my concern is that this is not a high population state to begin with.
No.
But when you're talking about now, you've got Iowa State playing football and their tickets are what, 60, 80 bucks a pop. Iowa's playing football in Iowa City on Saturday and their tickets are 60 or 80 bucks, sometimes 100 bucks a pop, depending on who they're playing, maybe even more on the black market, so to speak. And then you combine that, and then all of a sudden you throw a professional team somewhere in the middle of the state. Is there money left for that for people? I mean, are there going to be genuine interest between, you know, some families are going to say, well, I spent my money on Iowa State to go to season tickets. Well, other people are going to say, well, I spent my money on Iowa to go, you know, for season tickets. I don't have any money left to go to the NFL venue and see the expansion team or whatever Des Moines would happen to have, or Iowa. I don't know. I don't know if there's enough for that.
Point. That's a fair point.
I don't know, but it'll be interesting. Somebody would have to do some sort of a like a study of some sort,
research.
Do market research and study to see if it'd be feasible. But
and clearly, they probably already have, because that's why we've not had anything. But you think about how rabid the Barnstormers fans are, and that's
again the tickets
football.
Though. The tickets are not expensive. They're what, $15, $20 at the most.
You can probably get away with not, you know, if you find a business model that could work, you could probably get away with cheaper NFL tickets. I mean, you've got people, if you've got an NFL team, let's just say an NFL team, and you've got people that want to see, I don't know, the Rams. Well, how many opportunities are you going to see to get the chance to see the Rams? You better hope that they play in Chicago, Minneapolis, or Kansas City, or possibly Detroit or Green Bay. Yeah. Otherwise, you're traveling to see it. Now you've got the opportunity to see it. Now I'm just, you know, or the Patriots or the Dolphins, you know, teams that you never, the Commanders, the Giants,
Raiders,
Eagles,
whoever.
I mean, teams that you're not going to get an opportunity to see because, you know, number one, unless they're playing the NFC Central, you're not going to see the Giants, the Eagles, the Commanders, the Cowboys.
Yeah.
So unless you want to travel, you know, and I just think that's those are things that people would want to see. But I could be just way off base too, and
actually that would actually be of help to the Des Moines or Iowa, whatever they would have to be, Des Moines or Iowa, whatever. That would help them because everything's a short distance. Go to Chicago, they have to be in the NFC Central. Mm-hmm. You could go to Chicago and play. It's not a very far trip. It's really relatively quick airplane ride. It's same thing with Detroit, Minneapolis. If you're playing the Vikings, you know, those are 3 short trips from here, and it would be 3 short trips for them to come to Des Moines too, or wherever if it's built somewhere else. The Chiefs could come here relatively cheaply, and you know, if they played them once a year, whatever. I'm spitballing here a little bit, so that would be a little bit of an advantage that they're close in proximity to all of those other NFL teams that they could just. It wouldn't be a real travel nightmare. I wouldn't think
as far as travel expenses.
Yeah,
I mean, we've got
Denver's
a lot of
close.
direct flights to Denver.
Right.
So I mean, there's feasibility of proximity, but again, you're right. The population is small, and would people be willing to spend the money on that? I don't know, but I think if they were, you could definitely make it work.
Yeah, I think at first they would, but I think over time, that's my issue is, are they going to be able to do? I mean, Green Bay is probably the smallest market as far as population area of any team in the NFL.
Yeah, but they've got a entire state of Wisconsin that they're pulling from too, and parts of Michigan.
I agree with you because they've got hockey, they've got the NBA, they've got
WNBA, they've got football.
They've got all of that,
and they've got the Badgers, but they've only got the Badgers to deal with.
Right. I mean, they've got a bunch of other small colleges and stuff that people go to see.
Yeah, but I mean, that's everywhere though.
Yeah.
So,
well, I don't know. What do you think? Should we wrap it up? And because I don't know unless you have something else you want to talk about.
No, the only thing that I think we kind of didn't cover was a little transfer news in football. I don't know if we brought up Shahid Barros committing to Iowa, defensive back from South Dakota.
I think we talked about it
Iowa.
last week.
I can't remember if we talked about that or not, but
I don't know if there was anything to it at that point.
We threw it. There you go. There's your football bone for the week.
He's a defensive back, if I remember correctly, right?
Defensive back, yeah. It's a grad senior, I believe.
Well, so any help in that position is needed. So if he can play at all, it's good. Yeah. And being a grad,
he provides good depth or comes in a nickel situation. I think they talked to him, and it was either him or the kid from Austin Peay about. Somebody asked him if they talked to him about playing the cash position. He said no, strictly defensive back.
No,
so
okay.
I think they're pretty comfortable with Entringer being the cash and maybe Lutmer filling in that position. So we'll see.
There you go. We'll meet back here next week.
That's the only football bone that I had this week. So,
well, we got to talk about Caitlin. Everybody loves Caitlin, so we got to talk about her a little bit. That's good.
Yeah. So, well, we'll wrap it up. Like usual, if you like the content, give us a thumbs up. Give us a like. Subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything to subscribe to us. Catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, which I'm back on now. YouTube Shorts, obviously the YouTube channel that we have here. Just pretty much anywhere where you get podcasts, you can pretty much catch us there. TikTok or Twitter, I'm sorry, not TikTok. Twitter is another medium we post to a little bit. Other than that, we've got our merch store out there. Anything that you buy off that, any proceeds that come from that will go straight to the Swarm to help get players in here. It's good quality merchandise, stuff that we've bought that we've looked at. It's just it's good stuff. Well worth it, and then I think it's priced pretty reasonable. That we're not making very much off of it, but what we do, like I said, what we do make will go straight to Swarm, not going into our pockets at any point in time. So I want to make that very, very clear that we are not doing this to profit.
We have not made 1 red cent off this.
No, we do.
We enjoy doing it. Yeah, we do it because we like it.
So hopefully you like it as well, and you like the content that you have. If you got things that you'd like us to cover or suggestions on what we could do. I know somebody made a suggestion on my TikTok videos on how to make it a little easier for them to identify what content is on it initially. So I've done that. They reached out, said thank you. So more than willing to do things like that. So if you've got suggestions, bring them on. We'd love to hear them. We love to interact. That's the thing. We just not a lot of people interacting at this point, but we'd love to interact with people that are listening and get to know you.
Yeah.
So
100%.
All right. Well, that's all I've got. We'll round it off with a Go Hawks and get out of here.
Okay. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.